Back to Bible quizzes. We got 80 questions again today. Let's go ahead and get started. 1. What did the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men produce? Angels, kings, mighty men, or Nephilim? Mighty men. Genesis 6:4. There were giants on earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bore children to them. They were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. 2. Where did the Good Samaritan take the man after giving him first aid? An inn, his home, hospital, or the temple? An inn. Luke 10:34. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. 3. Whom did Jesus raise back to life privately after putting out the crowd? Lazarus, Jairus' daughter, the widow's son, or Tabitha? Jairus' daughter, Mark 5:40-41. But when he had put them all outside, he took the father and the mother of the child and those who were with him, and entered where the child was lying. Then he took the child by the hand and said to her, Talitha Kumi. 4. Whose sons were beaten up by a possessed man after failing exorcism attempt? Sceva, Zebedee, Aaron, or Eli? Sceva, Acts 19:14. Also there were 7 sons of Sceva, a Jewish chief priest, who did so, and the evil spirit answered and said, Jesus I know, and Paul I know, but who are you? Then the man leaped on them, overpowered them, and prevailed. 5. Which vessel carried the costly oil fragrance the woman poured on Jesus? Bronze jar, alabaster, golden bowl, or glass jar? An alabaster. Matthew 26:7. A woman came to him having an alabaster flask of very costly fragrant oil, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. 6. What did Jesus say the costly fragrance had prepared his body for? Healing, anointing, burial, or resurrection? Burial. Matthew 26:12. For in pouring this fragrant oil on my body, she did it for my burial. 7. To whom did Judas go to propose his betrayal of Jesus? Herod, chief priests, Pharisees, or soldiers? Chief priests. Matthew 26:14. Then one of the 12, called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests. 8. During which celebration did Jesus hold the Last Supper? Passover, Sabbath, Atonement, or Feast of Weeks? Passover. Luke 22:15. Then he said to them, with fervent desire I have desired to eat this Passover with you before I suffer. 9. What did Jesus say represented his blood in the Last Supper? Bread, wine, grapes, or water? Wine. Matthew 26:28. Then he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, Drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. 10. What were Jesus' disciples doing while he prayed in Gethsemane? Praying, singing, sleeping, or fasting? Sleeping. Matthew 26:40. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and said to Peter, What? Could you not watch with me 1 hour? 11. Who was the man Peter cut off his ear during the arrest of Jesus? Balak, Barabbas, Simeon, or Malchus? Malchus. John 18:10. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. 12. Who was Bar Jesus? The centurion, disciple, high priest, or sorcerer? Sorcerer, Acts 13:6. Now when they had gone through the island of Paphos, they found a certain sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar-Jesus. 13. What were the soldiers planning to do to the prisoners in Paul's shipwreck? Sell them, free them, kill them, or beat them? Kill them. Acts 27:42. And the soldiers' plan was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim away and escape. 14. What was the ethnicity of Moses' wife? Jewish, Ethiopian, Egyptian, or Canaanite? Ethiopian. Numbers 12:1. Then Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. 15. Can angels engage in sexual acts and reproduce according to the Bible? Yes, some, no, or it's not clear. No. Matthew 22:30. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like angels of God in heaven. 16. From what did God speak to Job? A bush, a cloud, a rock, or a whirlwind? A whirlwind. Job 38:1. Then the Lord answered Job out of the whirlwind and said. 17. Who was Naomi's other daughter-in-law besides Ruth? Orpah, Tamar, Hagar, or Naomi? Orpah. Ruth 1:4. Now they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah and the name of the other Ruth, and they dwelt there about 10 years. 18. What did Jesus compare the coming of the day of the Lord to? A thief in the night. Matthew 24:43. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. 19. What was the name of Eli's grandson born on the day Eli died? Abimelech, Ichabod, Mephibosheth, or Phinehas? Ichabod. 1 Samuel 4:21. Then she named the child Ichabod, saying, The glory has departed from Israel, because the ark of God had been captured and because of her father-in-law and her husband. 20. How many times did Elijah instruct his servant to look towards the sea for rain? 5, 7, 3, or 1? Seven. 1 Kings 18:43. And said to his servant, Go up now, look toward the sea. So he went up and looked, and said, There is nothing. And 7 times he said, Go again. 21. How many days did it take to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem under Nehemiah? 52 days, 54 days, 45 days, or 42 days? "52 days." Nehemiah 6:15. So the wall was finished on the 25th day of Elul in 52 days. 22. What caused David's first child with Bathsheba to die? Accident, murder, famine, or God's judgment? God's judgment. 2 Samuel 12:15. Then Nathan departed to his house, and the Lord struck the child that Uriah's wife bore to David, and it became ill. 23. What does the name Melchizedek mean? King of love, King of kings, King of righteousness, or King of mercy? King of righteousness. Hebrews 7:2. To whom also Abraham gave a 10th part of all, first being translated King of righteousness, and then also King of Salem, meaning King of peace. 24. How many wells did the Israelites find at Elim? 70, 50, 24, or 12? 12. Exodus 15:27. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees, so they camped there by the waters. 25. How many kings did Adoni-Bezek mutilate? 70, 40, 100, or 24? 70. Judges 1:7. And Adoni-Bezek said, 70 kings with their thumbs and big toes cut off used to gather scraps under my table, as I have done, so God has repaid me. Then they brought him to Jerusalem, and there he died. 26. What does Malachi say God would bring on earth if fathers and sons are not reconciled? Forgiveness, peace, a curse, or destruction? A curse. Malachi 4:6. And he will turn the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the hearts of the children to their fathers, lest I come and strike the earth with a curse. 27. Where did the distressing spirit that tormented Saul come from? God, the devil, idols, or sorcerers? God. 1 Samuel 16:14. But the Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and a distressing spirit from the Lord troubled him. 28. Who attempted to kill David several times? Joab, Saul, Samuel, or Goliath? Saul. 1 Samuel 19:10. Then Saul sought to pin David to the wall with a spear, but he slipped away from Saul's presence, and he drove the spear into the wall. So David fled and escaped that night. 29. What instruction was given about the bones of the Passover lamb? None should be broken. Exodus 12:46. In one house it shall be eaten, you shall not carry any of the flesh outside the house, nor shall you break one of its bones. 30. How does God perceive the death of his saints in his eyes? As a loss, a victory, precious, or sorrowful? Precious. Psalms 116:15. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. 31. To which brook did Elijah go to find water during the onset of the drought? Brook Kidron, Brook Kishon, Brook Jabbok, or Brook Cherith? Brook Cherith. 1 Kings 17:3. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah, saying, Get away from here and turn eastward, and hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. 32. Who was Solomon's lover according to the Songs of Solomon? Queen of Sheba, a Shulamite, Bathsheba, or an Egyptian? A Shulamite. Solomon narrates his love for a Shulamite woman throughout the book. Song of Solomon 6:13. Return, return, O Shulamite. Return, return, that we may look upon you. 33. During whose reign did Elijah pronounce the 3.5 years of drought? Ahab, David, Solomon, or Saul? Ahab. 1 Kings 17:1. And Elijah the Tishbite of the inhabitants of Gilead said to Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel lives, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years except at my word. 34. How many oxen did Solomon slaughter daily to feed his household? 10, 30, 20, or 100? (30) 1 Kings 4:22-23. Now Solomon's provision for one day was 30 cores of fine flour, 60 cores of meal, 10 fatted oxen, 20 oxen from the pastures, and 100 sheep, besides deer, gazelles, roebucks, and fatted fowl. 35. How much did the other servant owe the unforgiving servant? 1,000 talents, 50 shekels, 100 denarii, or 20 minas? $100 denarii, Matthew 18:28. But that servant went out and found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 denarii, and he laid hands on him and took him by the throat, saying, "Pay me what you owe." 36. Where did the woman with the lost coin lose it according to the parable? Market, well, temple, or her house? Her house. Luke 15:8. Or what woman having 10 silver coins, if she loses one coin, does not light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? 37. What job did the prodigal son do after his wealth was spent? Feeding swine, a fisherman, harlotry, or a shepherd? Feeding swine. Luke 15:15. Then he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he sent him into his fields to feed swine. 38. To whom did Jesus tell the parable of the rich man and Lazarus? Lawyers, disciples, the crowd, or Pharisees? Pharisees. Luke 16:14-15. Now the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, also heard all these things, and they derided him. And he said to them, You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your heart. 39. How many chapters are there in the book of Psalms? 170, 150, 191, or 135? $150. The book of Psalms has 150 chapters. 40. Who led the women in singing after crossing the Red Sea? Miriam, Zipporah, Huldah, or Deborah? Miriam. Exodus 15:20. Then Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took the timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after her with timbrels and with dances. 41. Around what time did God strike the firstborns of Egypt with death? Noon, midnight, morning, or twilight? Midnight. Exodus 12:29. And it came to pass at midnight that the Lord struck all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. 42. What punishment was given to people who ate leavened bread during the Passover? 40 lashes, death, being cut off, or fine? Being cut off. Exodus 12:19. For 7 days no leaven shall be found in your houses, since whoever eats what is leavened, that same person shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel. 43. Which among the domesticated animals was not offered to God for firstborn offering? Sheep, donkey, ox, or goat? Donkey. Exodus 13:13. But every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, and if you will not redeem it, then you shall break its neck. 44. What did Moses name the month the Israelites left Egypt? Tishrei, Nisan, Adar, or Abib? Abib. Exodus 13:4. And Moses said to the people, Remember this day in which you went out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out of this place. On this day you are going out in the month of Abib. 45. What did Moses say the Israelites would find in the promised land? Milk and honey. Exodus 3:8. So I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from that land to a good and large land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. 46. What did Elijah use to part the Jordan for him to cross? his rod, his mantle, his hand, or his staff? His mantle. 2 Kings 2:8. Now Elijah took his mantle, rolled it up, and struck the water, and it was divided this way and that, so that the two of them crossed over on dry ground. 47. How many chariots in total did Pharaoh use in his pursuit of the Israelites? 600, 300, 1,200, or all the chariots? All the chariots. Exodus 14:7. Also, he took his 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with captains over every one of them. 48. What crime had the two people crucified besides Jesus committed? Treason, murder, theft, or blasphemy? Theft. Matthew 27:38. Then two robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and another on the left. 49. How many prophetess daughters did Philip the evangelist have? 7, 4, 3, or 5? 4. Acts 21:8. Paul's companions departed and came to Caesarea, and entered the house of Philip the evangelist, who was one of the 7, and stayed with him. Now this man had 4 virgin daughters who prophesied. 50. How long did Hannah the prophetess live with her husband before she was widowed? 84 years, 12 years, 7 years, or 20 years? "7 years." Luke 2:36-37. Now there was one, Anna, a prophetess, the daughter of Phanuel, of the tribe of Asher. She had lived with a husband 7 years from her virginity, and this woman was a widow of about 84 years. 51. What made Pilate's wife warn him against persecuting Jesus during his trial? A dream, a vision, a prophet's warning, or an angelic visit? A dream. Matthew 27:19. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent to him, saying, "Have nothing to do with that just man, for I have suffered many things today in a dream because of him." 52. Who shaved David's men and tore their trousers, revealing their buttocks? The king of Ammon, the king of Edom, the king of Moab, or the king of Tyre? The king of Ammon. 2 Samuel 10:4. Therefore Hanun, the king of Ammon, took David's servants, shaved off half of their beards, cut off their garments in the middle at their buttocks, and sent them away. 53. Who was excited to see Jesus during the trial, hoping he would perform a miracle? Herod, Pilate, Annas, or Caiaphas? Herod. Luke 23:8. Now when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceedingly glad, for he had desired for a long time to see him, because he had heard many things about him, and he hoped to see some miracle done by him. 54. How many prophets of Baal did Elijah contest with on Mount Carmel? "450. 1 Kings 18:22. Then Elijah said to the people, I alone am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. 55. Which tree did Jesus curse for not having fruits? Palm tree, olive tree, fig tree, or cedar tree? Fig tree. Mark 11:13-14. And seeing from afar a fig tree having leaves, he went to see if perhaps he would find something on it. When he came to it, he found nothing but leaves. 56. Whose rod budded and produced almonds? Moses, Aaron's, Joshua's, or Caleb's? Errands, Numbers 17:8. Now it came to pass on the next day that Moses went into the tabernacle of witness, and behold, the rod of Aaron of the house of Levi had sprouted and put forth buds, had produced blossoms and yielded ripe almonds. 57. What did Moses use to divide the Red Sea? His rod, his cloak, the ark, or a staff? His rod. Exodus 14:16. But lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it. 58. Where was the temple shrine of goddess Diana located? Rome, Corinth, Ephesus, or Athens? Ephesus, Acts 19:35. And when the city clerk had quieted the crowd, he said, Men of Ephesus, what man is there who does not know that the city of Ephesians is temple guardian of the great goddess Diana? 59. What did Jacob see at Mahanaim? A burning bush, a talking donkey, an army of angels, or a ladder to heaven? An army of angels. Genesis 32:1-2. So Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, This is God's camp, and he called the name of that place Mahanaim. 60. What part of Jacob's body was hurt when he fought with a divine being? Feet, elbow, neck, or hip? Hip. Genesis 32:25. Now when he saw that he did not prevail against him, he touched the socket of his hip, and the socket of Jacob's hip was out of joint as he wrestled with him. 61. How was the relationship between Laban and Jacob faring? Peaceful, friendly, hostile, or distant? Hostile. Genesis 31:2. And Jacob saw the countenance of Laban, and indeed it was not favorable toward him as before. 62. Why were the Philistines envious of Isaac? He had a large army, he was prosperous, he took their wells, or he had many servants. He was prosperous. Genesis 26:13-14. The man began to prosper and continued prospering until he became very prosperous, for he had possessions of flocks and possessions of herds and a great number of servants, so the Philistines envied him. 63. Who among Adam's sons was a tiller of the ground? Abel, Seth, Cain, or Enosh? Cain. Genesis 4:2. Then she bore again, this time his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. 64. Who was Laban's father? Bethuel, Nahor, Terah, or Haran? Bethuel. Genesis 28:5. So Isaac sent Jacob away, and he went to Padan Aram to Laban, the son of Bethuel the Syrian, the brother of Rebekah, the mother of Jacob and Esau. 65. Who was Edom? Jacob, Isaac, Esau, or Cain? Esau. Genesis 36:1. Now this is the genealogy of Esau, who is Edom. 66. For how much shekels of silver did Abraham pay for the burial ground for Sarah? 300, 200, 500, or 400? Genesis 23:16. And Abraham weighed out the silver for Ephron, which he had named in the hearing of the sons of Heth, 400 shekels of silver. 67. Who conspired to have Gideon's 70 sons killed? Gideon's enemy, Gideon's friends, the Moabites, or Gideon's son? Gideon's son, Judges 9:5. Abimelech hired worthless and reckless men. Then he went to his father's house at Ophrah and killed his brothers, the 70 sons of Jerubbaal, Gideon, on one stone. 68. Who ordered the execution of the 70 sons of Ahab? Jehu, Jehoshaphat, Jehoiakim, or Joash? Jehu, 2 Kings 10:1-7. Now Ahab had 70 sons in Samaria, and Jehu wrote and sent letters to Samaria. So it was, when the letter came to them, that they took the king's sons and slaughtered 70 persons, put their heads in baskets. 69. Who hanged by his hair on a tree while attempting to flee in battle? Amnon, Joab, Absalom, or Adonijah? Absalom, 2 Samuel 18:9. Then Absalom met the servants of David. Absalom rode on a mule. The mule went under the thick boughs of a great terebinth tree, and his head caught in the terebinth, so he was left hanging between heaven and earth. 70. Which among the kings of Israel attempted suicide? Ahab, Saul, Manasseh, or Josiah? Saul, 1 Samuel 31:4. Then Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it." But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. Therefore Saul took a sword and fell on it. 71. Who was David's first wife? Abigail, Bathsheba, Ahinoam, or Michal? Michal. Michal, Saul's daughter, was the first wife recorded to be married to David. 1 Samuel 18:27. David took her and she became his wife. Michal, Saul's daughter. 72. What were the 204 skins David took to Saul for? A gift? For dowry? A test? Or a peace treaty? For dowry. 1 Samuel 18:27. Therefore David arose and went, he and his men, and killed 200 men of the Philistines. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full count to the king, that he might become the king's son-in-law. 73. Whose sword did David use to decapitate Goliath? David's, Saul's, Goliath's, or Jonathan's? Goliath's. 1 Samuel 17:51. So David struck the Philistine and killed him, but there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood over the Philistine, took his sword and drew it out of his sheath and killed him, and cut off his head with it. 74. Which prophet bought land to signify the return of Israel from captivity? Jeremiah, Elisha, Isaiah, or Ezekiel? Jeremiah 32:9. So I bought the field from Hanamel, the son of my uncle who was in Anathoth, and weighed out to him the money, 17 shekels of silver. 75. Who among these persecuted the church before his conversion? Ananias, Paul, Saul, Apollos, or Philip? Paul, Saul. Acts 8:3. As for Saul, he made havoc of the church, entering every house and dragging off men and women, committing them to prison. 76. Who was Simon Peter's father according to Jesus' address of him? Jonah, Simon, Zebedee, or John? Jonah. Matthew 16:17. Jesus answered and said to him, Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, son of Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. 77. Who secretly touched the hem of Jesus' garment to receive healing? A blind man, a woman with an issue of blood, a deaf man, or a possessed man? A woman with an issue of blood, Matthew 9:20-21, and suddenly a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years came from behind and touched the hem of his garment, for she said to herself, if only I may touch his garment, I shall be made well. 78. What was the name of the garden where Jesus prayed before his arrest? Nazareth, Bethlehem, Eden, or Gethsemane? Gethsemane, Matthew 26:36. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane and said to the disciples, Sit here while I go and pray over there. 79. What did Moses strike to bring forth water in the wilderness? A rock, a river, a tree, or a well? A rock. Exodus 17:6. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it. 80. How many days did Jesus fast in the wilderness? 10 days, 40 days, 70 days, or 30 days? "40 days, Matthew 4:2, and when he had fasted 40 days and 40 nights, afterward he was hungry. That's all our questions today. Remember, let us know how you did down below, and then compare your scores with your friends and family by sharing this video. Then we'll see you guys in the next one.